Hare Krishna, Hari Bol. Very ecstatic kirtan, and very nice to hear it on the guitar. It was very well done. Thank you, Randy, for starting the kirtan today and starting the program.
Thank you.
Today we'll start reading the questions by the sages. This is the first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, first verse, first canto. And we were especially thinking, this actually came out with a conversation with Venkatesh Prabhu. We were thinking that now so many people have the Srimad Bhagavatam sets in their home. So many people have, brought Srimad Bhagavatam in their home. All of us here on this call have Bhagavatam. So why not we start reading it together? Why not we start discussing it, reading this wonderful literature together? So this chapter is in many ways setting the scene for the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. It's setting the location, the context, the place of this great literature. And therefore it's entitled Questions by the Sages. So 80,000 sages have come together in the middle of the forest of Naimisharanya. 80,000 sages have been performing a great sacrifice. And by the result of this sacrifice, they hope that good will or auspiciousness will come to the people of Kali Yuga. So you could say, they want to bless the people of the age of Kali Yuga. Because the sages, they have a quality that they are always considering the welfare of others. Just like good people are always concerned about the welfare of others. So the sages, they're sages because they're always considering what is the best welfare activity, what's the best welfare work that I can do to help the people. And so the sages know that now the age of Kali is upon them. The age of Kali is about to start, and many unfortunate things will happen. It's the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. It's the age of, iron, and the world gets, so overburdened by sinful acts and by pollution and quarrel and hypocrisy. So how can we help the people of this age? And so as a way to help them, they're doing this sacrifice. And it's no ordinary sacrifice. 80,000 sages are sitting there doing this sacrifice. And their entire bodies are covered with black soot from the sacrifice. When you do a fire sacrifice and you sit in front of the fire long enough, your whole body becomes black from the smoke coming from the fire. And they become emaciated by not eating or drinking anything and just performing this very difficult sacrifice. And now that sacrifice is coming to a close. And as it comes to a close, the great sage Shonaka, who's Suta Goswami. Suta Goswami arrives at the scene. Suta Goswami arrives at the scene, and all the sages headed by Shonaka Rishi can understand that his coming is the result of their sacrifice. Which is a very interesting point, that the result of our spiritual acts, our pious acts, is the association of a great devotee of the Lord. And if we are blessed with that association, then that's the greatest gift, the greatest benediction. And so Suta Goswami has arrived. And therefore now that this great self-realized person has arrived before them, they want to have their questions answered. They want to ask their questions, and they want their questions answered. So two things will become very evident by reading this. One is that how exalted the questions are. So in order to have very exalted conversations, you need a very exalted speaker, but you also need an exalted audience. If your audience is not ready for the knowledge, you cannot speak that knowledge. Just like I have a 3-year-old daughter, Sita. So to her, I cannot explain to her calculus. she is so intelligent, so bright, so wonderful, but she's not the right audience to explain the mathematical principles of calculus. But to someone who is very highly knowledgeable, to that person, you could explain calculus. So to give very high knowledge, you could say very deep knowledge, very confidential knowledge, you need a very good speaker, but you also need good listeners. So these listeners are not just anyone, they're great sages. And so the sages are the ones listening. And then the second thing that you see is the speaker. If all the sages say that Shaunaka Rishi, Suta Goswami can instruct them, then how exalted Suta Goswami must be. So a great speaker, a very wonderful, powerful speaker, and a great audience. And of course, he will be narrating a discussion between another great speaker and another very exalted listener. That is Shukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. And these questions that are being posed by sages. So this also means that the questions that are being asked are the right questions. It also shows the greatness of the questions, which is a very important principle in, you could say, all aspects of life. In very big companies, corporations, the heads of those companies will often say that success is not knowing the right answers, but success is asking the right questions. If you have the right questions, the answers are there. But the people who are most sought after are the people who ask the right questions. So this is what the sages are doing. They are asking the questions that are actually beneficial for all of humanity. So we can start with our reading now. This is just a very short introduction as to what we're about to read. And before we start any reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we always start with one prayer. And so I will unmute all of you, and you can please repeat after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So the first text is here on the screen, and those of you who have the book at home, you can please use your books. And so we'll just read some verses. What we'll do is we won't read all the purports because that will slow us down. We'll read selected purports, and we'll read all the translations. So I'll just I'll just mention people's names as they show up on the screen, on the participant screen that I have, and we can take turns reading. So the first text, Anuradha Mataji, if you can please read the translation.
O my Lord Sri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on earth. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Mataji, you read so nicely. Yeah, I feel like you should read all of them. Yeah, they're very good.
Thank you.
So this is the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and what's very unique about this verse is that it starts with the word Om. So Om is it's the bija mantra. It's the syllable from which all other syllables come, and if it's said properly, it actually contains all the letters within it. I'm actually taking a yoga class for my physical health, and my yoga teacher he mentions this. He's teaching me how to say the word Om. It's like Om. It contains all the letters within it, starting with A all the way up to M. So it's very, very, you could say, standard and very proper that any spiritual recitation starts with the word Om. And Om signifies the Supreme Lord, signifies Lord Krishna. It's like the English word God. It's the general term. It's a symbol. It signifies the Supreme Lord, but it does not mention personally who that God is. So then, when we say, in terms of that Western context, when we say Jehovah, Yahweh, then those are more specific names referring to God. Whereas God can refer to any name of God. In the same way, Om is like this general term. It refers to all of Brahman, the Supreme Lord, God. So therefore, we focus more on chanting of Hare Krishna, because by chanting Hare Krishna, we are directly referring to Krishna's first name, to his family, to his nickname, to his loving name, Krishna. And so it's more personal. It's actually more potent. It's better. But still, Om is kind of the formal representation. It's the transcendental vibration. So this first line, it's saying Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om, this Supreme Lord, Namo, I offer my obeisances, Bhagavate, unto the personality of Godhead. And who is that? He is Vasudevaya. He is the son of Vasudev, Vasudeva. So the Srimad Bhagavatam begins, it's a very key point here, it begins by very clearly and closely first identifying who is the person we are speaking about. People say God, and then people say, well, what do you mean by God? There's so many gods, and and some people even believe that, probably that Trump is God, or there's so many. God is so general. In the same way, Om is so general. It's such anything could be there. But it says Om Namo Bhagavate, Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, who is the son of Vasudeva. He is that person who actually appeared from the heart of Vasudeva. That Vasudeva, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. And then the second line, Janma Desya Yato. This is very significant because these are actually the first few lines of the Vedanta Sutra. So we all may have heard that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And actually it's a very interesting book. Like, we don't actually come across it because it's not one of our standard books, but it's a very powerful book. It describes in very short phrases, in short form, the absolute truth, the knowledge of the absolute truth in a very systematic way. And the Srimad Bhagavatam expands on that and actually takes that philosophical discussion and makes it real for us. It explains it to us through the lives of the great saints. It tells us who this great Vasudeva is by, in the 10th canto, narrating his transcendental pastimes. So his Janma Adi, which Srila Prabhupada translates as creation, sustenance, and destruction, all of his activities, those are being described. And how is this being described? Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye. So this knowledge was imparted to the heart, Brahma Hridaya. So this Brahma refers to Lord Brahma in his heart, who is the Adi Kavi, who is the first person or the first speaker of Vedic knowledge. That knowledge was given to him. And what does this do? And this part is very interesting. It says, yes, Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatra Trisargam Risha. That this knowledge differentiates truth from reflection, truth from illusion. It separates illusion from reality. And what is this illusion? This illusion in the very first verse of the Bhagavatam. And that's why this metaphor is so important for us. It says this truth is like the reflection. Illusion is like the reflection. This entire material world is that reflection world, which is just a simple superimposition, a reflection of that original spiritual transcendental abode. So this book is not going to give us flowery language. It's not, just a book of, fables. It's meant to distinguish truth from illusion. It's meant to be very serious. It's a very serious discussion, and a discussion that doesn't beat around the bush, but it goes right to the point. It's meant to establish the truth, which is different from that reflection on fire, water, and earth that we find in this world. And so therefore, it ends by saying that this reflection appears to be factual, although it's unreal in the sense of temporary. And we want to give up the unreality and we want to come to the truth. Therefore, it says, I meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from this illusion of the material world. So this verse is a very cryptic verse. There's so much, it's described how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he lectured on this verse for over 3 months, just on this one verse, because it's the first verse and it really packs in a lot in this one verse. It establishes who is the Supreme Lord. This person is Om, this person is Bhagavan, and this person is the son of Vasudeva. So first of all, it establishes who is the Supreme Lord. It draws a connection between the Bhagavatam and the Vedanta Sutra by the words Janmadhyasya Yataha. It describes where we get this knowledge from, which is Lord Brahma. Therefore, we are known as the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. It tells us what it is trying to do. It's trying to distinguish reality from illusion for the welfare of all. This is actually a definition of knowledge in the Vedic scriptures. Knowledge is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. And finally, it's giving us the truth, which is Lord Sri Krishna. It's showing us how to meditate upon that Supreme Lord Krishna. And these things are described in the Vedic literatures as Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. 3 things. That spiritual knowledge gives us knowledge about the Sambandha, which is the relationship between us and God. The second is the Abhideya, or gives us knowledge about the process of reviving that relationship, or the process of reaching the ultimate destination, and that is abhidheya. And the third thing that it gives us is prayojana, which is knowledge about the destination. Knowledge about what is our destination. The Supreme Lord, Krishna, his eternal abode, his pastimes, his activities. So once again, three things. Sambandha, which is our relationship with the Lord. Abhideya, the process by reaching, by reviving that relationship, that's the practices of bhakti. And the third is the goal, which is Krishna, the Supreme Lord. So these were a few comments on this verse. Does anyone else have any comments on this verse before we move on? Anuradha Mataji, would you like to comment something since you read this verse?
I have nothing to say except to listen, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Prabhuji, you mentioned Sambandha, Abhideha, and Prayojan. So, Sambandha is relationship. So, if the relationship already exists, then why there is a process again to establish?
Sambandha means knowledge of the relationship. So the relationship already exists. But what the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam tell us is they give us knowledge. This is the theoretical knowledge, the knowledge that we have a relationship with God, and what is that relationship? So, okay, I may even know that God is there, I have a relationship with him, but what is that relationship? So Sambandha is the knowledge about the relationship with the Supreme Lord. And then Abhideya is the path that's laid out of the practice. So, we wake up early in the morning, we chant the Maha Mantra, we read Srimad Bhagavatam. These are preferred practices or suggested practices to revive our eternal relationship. And then, okay, we know we have a relationship, we know the path of reaching the goal, but then what is the goal? That is, Lord Chaitanya says, Prema Pumartam Han, the highest goal is this spontaneous, loving, devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So that is Prayojana.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Venkatesh Prabhu, do you have any comment or question? Okay, not there on the phone. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, yes, Prabhu, the Om thing that you told is kind of a vague thing. But I have listened to Sri Vaishnavas who was a more explanation for Om. They split the Om into A and Ma, and then they explain that A is denotes to the Supreme, and the Ma refers to the Jiva, and then the Jiva belongs to Lord. They go deep into that Om, Prabhuji. Probably in our Sampradaya, since we have the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is superior to Om, and it's more applicable in Kali Yuga, so we don't really emphasize more on the Om thing. But even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am the Om. So, yeah, I just want to have these comments, probably. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yes, and no, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there is the detailed explanation of the word Om and how it encompasses the universe. Like you mentioned, the Lord, the Jivas, the material nature, all three things are encompassed within the word Om. Because as I was mentioning, the Om actually refers to Brahman. And ultimately, everything is Brahman. Everything comes from Brahman. Everything rests in Brahman. Therefore, both Bhu, Bhuvar, and Sva, both this world, the middle worlds, and the highest world, everything exists within Om, within Brahman. And Om is a sound representation of Brahman. So when we chant Om, we are referring to Brahman. When we chant Krishna, we are referring to Krishna, the personal form, the personal original form of the Lord. And so because we are more interested in the personal form, we are chanting Krishna. But if we wanted to realize the impersonal Brahman, like everything, not just, you could say, not specifically the personal form, but you could say the more general appreciation of God as power, then we would chant Om. So Om is
Makes
nice
it more
to.
clear, Prabhuji. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu, for the, yes, like, in that case, like, we can even worship water as a taste of water is me. So we, like you said, like, it's more specific and we go more deeper into worshipping the Supreme Lord as personal form than Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Is that correct, Prabhuji? Yeah.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. You said it very nicely, actually. Yes, that's absolutely.
Thank you so much.
So let's read on. We just, this is text 1. Text 2. Here, next one. Brandy, you're next on the, if you can read text 2, please.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vasudeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Wow. Yes. This verse is actually very, very famous. It's a very beautiful verse. And it's very inspiring for us now that we've begun this reading. It says, as soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. So one important point here is that how the Srimad Bhagavatam is not just the means to the end. So in our own common sense way to think, when we read something, we gain knowledge to do something. In other words, it's the knowledge you gain to then actually perform the activity. But in the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's not just that we are learning about the Lord, but we are actually in contact with the Lord. You see, so hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is both it is both the knowledge, but it is also the means of realizing the Lord. Both things happen. It's both giving us the knowledge, but it's also the process of reaching the Lord. It in of itself is a spiritual activity by which we can realize the Lord. And there are various statements of Srila Prabhupada, and he's basing it on Vedic scriptures, that clarify this. Like Srila Prabhupada, in one place he says that reading Srimad Bhagavatam is pure devotional service. And then he goes on to say, he says, the only reason why we have other services is because you cannot read Bhagavatam 24 hours a day. So because of our conditioning, we cannot read all the time. We need engagement, and our senses need engagement. We need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to bathe. So therefore, we spiritualize everything. When we eat, we make Krishna prasadam, we offer it to Krishna, and we eat Krishna's prasadam. In that way, we spiritualize our eating. We spiritualize our sleeping by hopefully dreaming about Krishna. But we have to do these things because we have those natural human activities. But actually, he's telling us that there's no need to do anything else. This is complete in of itself. And so how important it must be for us to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, and the other points in this verse are what we already discussed, right? It's the highest truth, which rejects all religious activities that are materially motivated. So what this means is that it rejects false religious systems. That is, religious systems that are simply done for social status, for materially motivated reasons. People become very religious to have a good name in society, to control others, as Marx said, to feel very elevated, better and beyond others. All of that is, the Bhagavatam begins by rejecting religious activities which are materially motivated. If there's some material motivation, that is not religion. That is not the Bhagavatam's interest. But it is only interested in dharma projita kaitava parama nirmat saranam satam. Dharma projita kaitava, it rejects the kaitava, the fruit of activities of mundane religiosity. And it is only focused on parama nirmat saranam satam, that knowledge which is dear to those who are 100% pure in heart, the devotees of the Lord. To them, the Bhagavatam is very pleasing. And only that knowledge it discusses. And like we discussed, it distinguishes truth from reality, truth from illusion, for the welfare of all. And that truth, only that truth is relevant, which actually uproots the threefold miseries. So there's many truths, but it's not talking about armchair philosophical truths, because those don't benefit people. So it's interested in a philosophy that actually helps a person get out of suffering. So this beautiful Bhagavatam is compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity. Yes. Let's read one more verse here. Sorry, I stopped the share. Sorry. Share the screen. I meant to go back. Okay. So text 3. Andrew, can you read text 3? Here, actually.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarine juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls.
Thank you. Very nice. And this verse, I was thinking it's a very famous verse. So I'll go ahead and read the purport of this also. But before that, I'll read the text. Nigamakal galitam phalam shukat mahad amrita dravya samyutam vibata bhagavatam rasamalayam mahoraho rasika bhuvi bhavuka. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanates from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So this Bhagavatam is so relishable that even liberated souls enjoy reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not just for novices like ourselves, but even for the liberated souls. Andrew, would you like to go ahead and read the first paragraph of the purport?
In the two previous shlokas, it has been definitely proved that the Srimad Bhagavatam is a sublime literature which surpasses all other Vedic scriptures due to its transcendental qualities. It is transcendental to all mundane activities and mundane knowledge. In this shloka, it is stated that Srimad Bhagavatam is not only a superior literature, but is the ripened fruit of all Vedic literatures. In other words, it is cream of all Vedic knowledge. Considering all this, patient and submissive hearing is definitely essential. With great respect and attention, one should receive the message and lessons imparted by the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Mathura Priya Prabhu, would you like to read the next paragraph?
Sure, Prabhu. The Vedas are compared to the desire tree because they contain all things knowledgeable by men. They deal with mundane necessity as well as spiritual realization. The Vedas contain regulative principle of knowledge covering social, political, religious, economic, military, medical, chemical, physical, and metaphysical subject matter, and all that may keep the body and soul together. Above and beyond all, these are a specific direction for the spiritual realization. Regulative knowledge involves a gradual raising of the living entity to the spiritual platform. And the highest spiritual realization is a knowledge that the personality of Godhead is reservoir of all the spiritual tastes and or rasas.
Deepakji, would you like to read the next one? This one.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yeah, I will read. Is it audible to all?
Yes.
Yeah. Every living entity, beginning from Brahma, the firstborn living being within the material world, down to the insignificant ant, desires to release some sort of taste derived from sense perceptions. These sensual pleasures are technically called rasas. Such rasas are of different varieties. In the revealed scriptures, the following 12 varieties of rasas are enumerated: Rudra, anger; Adbhuta, wonder; Sringara, conjugal love; Hasya, comedy; Veera, chivalry; Daya, mercy; Dasya, servitorship; Sakhya, fraternity; and Bhanka, horror; Divhitsa, shock; and Shanta, neutrality; and Vatsalya, parenthood. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Soumya, would you like to read this next paragraph? Or is she there?
The sum total of these rasas is called affection or love. Primarily, such signs of love are manifested in adoration, service, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. And when these five are absent, love is present indirectly in anger, wonder, comedy, chivalry, fear, shock, and so on. For example, when a man is in love with a woman, the rasa is called conjugal love. But when such love affairs are disturbed, there may be wonder, anger, shock, or even horror. Sometimes love affairs between two persons culminate in ghastly murder scenes. Such rasas are displayed between man and man and between animal and animal. There is no possibility of exchange or rasa between a man and an animal or between a man and other species of living beings within the material world. The rasas are exchanged between members of the same species, but as far as the spirit souls are concerned, they are qualitatively with the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the rasas were originally exchanged between the spiritual living being and the spiritual whole, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spiritual exchange or rasa is fully exhibited in spiritual existence between living beings and the Supreme.
Very nice. Randa Mataji, would you like to read the next two paragraphs? This one's very short.
Yes, Prabhu, thank you. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is therefore described in the Shruti mantras. Vedic hymns as the fountainhead of all rasas. When one associates with the Supreme Lord and exchanges one's constitutional rasa with the Lord, then the living being is actually happy. These Shruti mantras indicate that every living being has its constitutional position, which is endowed with a particular type of rasa to be exchanged with the personality of Godhead. In the liberated condition only, this primary rasa is experienced in full. In the material existence, the rasa is experienced in the perverted form, which is temporary, and thus the rasas of the material world are exhibited in the material form of Raudra, anger, and so on. Thank you.
Devi Murthy, you can read the next one.
Therefore, one who attains full knowledge of these different rasas, which are the basic principles of activities, can understand the false representations of the original rasas which are reflected in the material world. The learned scholar seeks to relish the real rasa in the spiritual form. In the beginning, he desires to become one with the Supreme. Thus, less intelligent transcendentalists cannot go beyond this conception of becoming one with the spirit whole without knowing the different rasas.
And anyone else is, I skipped, who else is here? Venkateshwar, can you read, or if you're on the phone, then that's hard.
Read. I can read, Prabhu. So, which verse, Prabhu?
In this shloka.
Third shloka? Third?
No, we're reading the purport of the third shloka. And so it says, we're at the part of this in this shloka. That's
sorry,
okay.
Prabhu.
That's okay, no problem. I know you're on the phone, so it's hard. In this shloka, it is definitely stated that spiritual rasa, which is relished even in the liberated stage, can be experienced in the literature of the Srimad Bhagavatam, due to its being the ripened fruit of all Vedic knowledge. By submissively hearing this transcendental literature, one can attain the full pleasure of his heart's desire. But one must be very careful to hear the message from the right source. Srimad Bhagavatam is exactly received from the right source. It was brought by Narad Muni. It was brought by Narad Muni from the spiritual world and given to his disciple, Srila Vyasadeva. The latter in turn delivered the message to his son, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, and Srila Shukadeva Goswami delivered the message to Maharaj Parikshit just 7 days before the king's death. Srila Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul from his very birth. He was liberated even in the womb of his mother, and he did not undergo any sort of spiritual training after his birth. At birth, no one is qualified, neither in the mundane nor in the spiritual sense. But Srila Shukadeva Goswami, due to his being a perfectly liberated soul, did not have to undergo an evolutionary process for spiritual realization. Yet, despite his being a completely liberated person, situated in the transcendental position above the three modes, he was attracted to this transcendental rasa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is adored by liberated souls who sing Vedic hymns. The Supreme Lord's pastimes are more attractive to liberated souls than to mundane people. He is of necessity not impersonal, because it is only possible to carry on transcendental rasa with a person. And Anuradha Mataji, if you would like to finish the purport, then you can just.
Sure. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are narrated, and the narration is systematically depicted by Srila Sukadeva Goswami. Thus, the subject matter is appealing to all classes of persons, including those who seek liberation and those who seek to become one with the Supreme Whole. In Sanskrit, the parrot is also known as shuka. When a ripened fruit is cut by the red beaks of such birds, its sweet flavor is enhanced. The Vedic fruit, which is mature and ripe in knowledge, is spoken through the lips of Srila Sukadeva Goswami, who is compared to the parrot, not for his ability to recite the Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from his learned father, or for his ability to present the work in a manner that would appeal to all classes of men. The subject matter is so presented through the lips of Srila Sukadeva Goswami that any sincere listener that hears submissively can at once relish transcendental tastes which are distinct from the perverted tastes of the material world. The ripened fruit is not dropped all of a sudden from the highest planet of Krishnalok. Rather, it has come down carefully through the chain of disciplic succession without change or disturbance. Foolish people who are not in the transcendental disciplic succession commit great blunders by trying to understand the highest transcendental rasa, known as the rasa dance, without following in the footsteps of Shukadeva Goswami, who presents this fruit very carefully by stages of transcendental realization. One should be intelligent enough to know the position of Srimad Bhagavatam by considering personalities like Shukadeva Goswami, who deals with the subject so carefully. This process of disciplic succession of the Bhagavad school suggests that in the future also Srimad Bhagavatam has to be understood from a person who is factually a representative of Srila Sukadeva Goswami. A professional man who makes a business out of reciting the Bhagavatam illegally is certainly not a representative of Sukadeva Goswami. Such a man's business is only to earn his livelihood. Therefore, one should refrain from hearing the lectures of such professional men. Such men usually go to the most confidential part of the literature without undergoing the gradual process of understanding this grave subject. They usually plunge into the subject matter of the rasa dance, which is misunderstood by foolish class of men. Some of them take this to be immoral, while others try to cover it up by their own stupid interpretations. They have no desire to follow in the footsteps of Srila Sukadeva Goswami. One should conclude, therefore, that the serious student of the rasa should receive the message of Bhagavatam in the chain of disciplic succession from Srila Sukadeva Goswami, who describes the Bhagavatam from its very beginning and not whimsically to satisfy the mundaner who has very little knowledge in transcendental science. Srimad Bhagavatam is so carefully represented that a sincere and serious person can at once enjoy the ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge simply by drinking the nectarian juice through the mouth of Sukadeva Goswami or his bona fide representative.
Wonderful. So, any questions or comments on this very elaborate purport? There's so much to discuss here. So we might as well, we'll start with the different realizations that people had while reading.
Prabhuji, I do have a question.
Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit on this reflection, when Srila Prabhupada explains that there are these rasas of different varieties and he lists the 12 different rasas, but then he then talks about the perversion of these rasas, like how they then in this reflection within the material world. So these exist in the spiritual world, all of these, even these so-called negative emotions, I would say, or negative rasas, one can say these are negative, but I know that we have many leelas that show how these negative rasas, so to speak, have very positive outcomes, and how that is reflected in the material world. If you could elaborate on the origin of these and how they played out into the material world, that would be wonderful.
That's a very, very nice question and a very observant one, because Prabhupada is actually talking about not just the 5 traditional ones that we speak of. The 5 traditional rasas are neutrality, which is a relationship of awe and reverence with God, that God is power, God is light. The second one is dasya ras, which is the Lord being the master, us being the servant. The third one is one of sakhya ras, or friendship, that we are friends with the Lord is our friend. The fourth one is vatsalya ras, which is Lord being our child. So almost reverse roles, where the devotee is the parent and the Lord is the child. And the final one is Madhurya Ras, which is the conjugal loving relationship between Krishna and his lovers, the gopis of Vrindavan. So these are the 5 traditional rasas that we speak about, but there's actually so many rasas. And Prabhupada here is saying that they all come from the spiritual world. They all originate from that spiritual world. And this world is a reflection of the spiritual world. So whatever exists in the spiritual world, in this world, must exist in the spiritual world, like you're saying. So how is this possible? And how could we have emotions or rasas like anger? Because that's also a relationship. You don't get angry with someone you don't have a relationship with. We have a relationship, therefore we get angry, right? So anger, lust, greed, what about these rasas? How do these become translated? Or how do these exist in the spiritual world? Does anyone have any thoughts? Would anyone like to suggest a response? In what way these could be there in the spiritual
Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Is it greed, Prabhu? Is it greed that you're talking like in spiritual world?
Well, the other rasas also, Prabhupada is speaking about anger, for example, how anger is also there in the spiritual world.
Yes, Prabhu, like anger, Radharani gets angry with Krishna when Krishna disappears from, playfully during Rasa dance, during the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Sometimes Radharani gets angry on Krishna. So that's part of spiritual world. And the rasa, rasa of anger exists in spiritual world from this thing.
Yes. So such a nice example of Radharani becoming angry with Krishna. What's another example of in the context of Leela, where a devotee becomes angry with the Lord, or the Lord becomes angry with the devotee? An even more stark one.
Sorry, Prabhu, what was the
what would be even I'm just asking everyone, what would be even more examples or other examples of this transcendental anger that you speak of in Leela?
Well, actually, Prabhu, my question was more towards, we know these 5 relationships. So we have these relationships with Krishna. So we can have this dasya relationship, and this rasa can happen, your exchange between Krishna or Vatsalya or Madhurya. But what about these sort of negative rasas? And you hear and I'm not qualified to speak about Brijvasis, but you hear about Brijvasis and the way they have some of these, they will get angry with Krishna, they will yell with Krishna, to Krishna. There may be some of these rasas there, although we may not be qualified to have them. They originated, right?
Yes,
and so I have the positive ones, and I'm okay with those. I just don't understand how can we have that reverse exchange, or are there those reverse exchanges, or how to mitigate those, I guess, or how to navigate those negative ones, I think is more my question.
Yes. So that's basically, so those relationships and those rasas, those emotions, like you're saying, they exist in the spiritual world, like Venkateshwar was saying in terms of Srimati Radharani's anger towards Krishna, or I was thinking in my mind, Mother Yashoda's anger towards Krishna, chastising Krishna. But how can those exist in the spiritual world? Like your question is there, because those emotions exist, but they're different because they only bring an auspicious result. Meaning that even those emotions are exhibited as an exhibition of the devotee's desire to serve the Lord. They're exhibited as a service to the Lord. So Prabhupada in one place explains that how in the spiritual world, there's only one rasa, and that's the rasa of servitude. That actually everyone in any rasa is trying to serve the Lord. As in the process of being a lover, they're serving the Lord. As a friend, they're serving the Lord. In the same way, when becoming angry with the Lord, which you're mentioning, like the Brajavasis, if they're on the pure level, if they're on the highest level, they're only expressing that anger out of an intense desire to serve the Lord. And therefore that anger is actually love. Like the anger of a mother towards her child when the child is very naughty. It is anger, but it's really not anger. It's more love that's expressed through anger just to scare the child a little bit so that they learn that actually, no, you don't drop the milk when it's in your hand. You drink it, right? So the child learns through that loving chastisement. And the key word here is loving. So in the same way, we have the example of Jagannath Das Babaji, for example, who would become, who would chase his Gaurnitai deities with a stick when they would become very naughty. One time, he had this little hut, and he had 2 pots by which he would offer prasad to the Lord. And he just had these 2 pots. That's all he owned. And those pots were very important to him because that's how he cooked for the Lord and for his service to the Lord. So one day he was gone and he left his deities, who he called by name, like they were his members of his family. So he left Gaurnitai in the hut to care for the hut while he was out, look after the hut. And so he leaves, and in the meantime a thief comes. And this thief takes Babaji Maharaj's 2 pots and disappears. He goes away. And when Babaji Maharaj comes back, he sees that the pots are missing. And then he asks Gaurnitai, he says, "What is this? The thief came and you didn't even stop him? Now who's going to, how am I going to cook your meal? How can you be so naughty?" And he becomes very angry. He takes up a stick and he starts to chase the Lord, and the Lord starts running behind him. So that is an example that the anger was expressed as a way of serving the Lord. That relationship was so intimate and so sweet that it was nothing but a pure loving anger. Another example is, and it just was in my mind and it escaped me. But there's so many of Lord Hanuman, right? That out of a desire to serve the Lord, he's feeling very angry on the demon Ravana. And so, of course, in Krishna's Bhoma Leelas, his pastimes on this earth, the devotees of the Lord become very angry with the demons. In the spiritual world, there's no demons, but there's some indication that there are, you could say, imaginary demons, like Krishna creates them just for fun. So they may feel angry at those demons. Or in a competitive spirit, they may feel angry as a way of enjoying the competition, like in the case of Srimati Radharani. So these are, Krishna's a thief also, right? Krishna steals butter. And that rasa of stealing exists in the spiritual world. And it exists in the material world. But in the spiritual world, that stealing is different because that stealing is the cause of immense pleasure in the person who is the victim of the theft. Right? The gopis feel immense pleasure when Krishna steals their butter. In the material world, that same rasa is there. But when someone steals, then the victim feels very unhappy. That person is experiencing great sorrow. So that's the difference of the dynamic.
Thank you so much. I think my biggest part was of these sort of negative connotations, these rasas, and how one can have them too in your spiritual life towards Krishna. That anger can be there, that frustration can be there. So thank you for elaborating.
Now, and this is also another point which we can expand on, is that how devotees like the Pandavas or Draupadi, they would sometimes, out of their devotion, they would question Lord Krishna. They would say, "How could you let us go through this? How is this possible?" But also the amazing part is that they never would. In other words, that's the amazing part of the great devotees of the Lord, Like the most wonderful example of this is in Govardhan Lila, when Krishna tells all the Brajavasis that you perform this Govardhan sacrifice instead of Indra pastime. And then they follow his instruction. And after that, Indra inundates them with water. And he's ready to kill all the residents of Vrindavan. And at that point, all the residents of Vrindavan, they run to Krishna saying, Krishna, Krishna, you're the most wonderful person. Please save us. Please save us. And the initial reaction that should be there is that of blaming the Lord. Like, you told us to do this, and now you better save us. But that doesn't come to their mind because of their immense devotion to the Lord. But yes, someone may may rebuke the Lord out of love. Like, just see what position you put me in. Krishna, please, give me a break. But Krishna knows that in the heart of that devotee, there's unlimited loyalty. That they're saying that. It's a way of expressing their affection to the Lord. But the devotee, Marobhi Rakhubi Joi Chatoar, whatever happens, that devotee will never leave me. That devotee will always be in touch with me. And so that exhibition of his anger is simply his devotion or his path on the spiritual path, his progress on the spiritual path. Again, like a good example is of a child, where the mother may chastise the child, and as a result of this, the child gets angry. You actually see the little kids, they get angry, but then they still keep running back to the mother. So it is an anger where the devotee feels resentful sometimes, maybe towards the Lord, or the difficult test the Lord is putting through. But still, it's like, it's all love. They all know, okay, this is Krishna acting in this way in my life. So I think maybe that's what you're getting at. It is also, sometimes it's among the liberated souls, but sometimes even those on the spiritual path may have those emotions, and they are to some degree conditioned, but they're also spiritual because somehow they increase our love for Krishna.
That was it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there reflections on this point that Anuradha Mataji brought up? How in the spiritual world there's different rasas, different emotions that we can express towards Krishna. What are some other examples of great personalities who have different rasas with the Lord? One person actually comes to my mind who has a fighting rasa with the Lord. Krishna enjoys fighting.
The demons, they are also like
yes, many of the demons are actually devotees. So like Jay and Vijay, they are great devotees, and they come to this world as demons so that Krishna can have a good fight, and they enjoy that service, and Krishna enjoys that wrestling match. An example of that, a very good example of that, is Bhishma Dev, and he's not as yes, Prabhu, exactly. Yeah.
No, Prabhuji. I was about to say, then you told.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, so so Bhishma Dev, he's in that chivalrous rasa. He's on the battlefield and he's shooting arrows at Lord Krishna, and blood is coming out of Krishna's arms. It's actually described, blood is coming, and that's giving him and Krishna great pleasure. And Srila Prabhupada, in the purport in that verse, he tries to explain to us how is it that such a great devotee of the Lord can feel pleasure by seeing blood oozing from the body of Krishna. And how can Krishna also feel this pleasure? And he says that this is so intensely loving that it's just like the love that a lover and beloved feel when they bite at each other. Right? So when they bite, there may be even blood that comes out. But that biting is a very intimate form of a loving exchange. And in our material conditioning, we cannot, imitate that. We certainly cannot shoot arrows at our friend. But it's actually not a material thing. That's why it is very spiritual.
Probably, like I like to bring this upon this juncture. Like when during the conversation Prabhupada had in perfect answers and questions, there was a question that if rascaldom comes from Krishna too, and Prabhupada says, yes, Krishna is a great rascal. And everything in this world comes from Krishna. Prabhupada was saying that, and I think, I don't know the initiated name of the devotee, his name is Bob. He's asking, like, is rascaldom coming from Krishna too? Yes, Prabhupada agrees that, even rascaldom comes from Krishna.
Yes. Yes, his name is Brahma Tirtha Prabhu. And he was one, yes, Brahma Tirtha, right? And Bob, go ahead. And he was a very good example of someone who was very actually spiritually enlightened, that he could ask very good questions. Prabhupada appreciated his questions and then gave very good answers to his questions. And that book, Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, is very nice. So there, yes, even that comes from Krishna. Even being a naughty person, a rascal, comes from Krishna. Everything comes from Krishna except forgetfulness of Krishna. And you might wonder, well, how can that also not come from Krishna? In some ways it does come from Krishna, but it's Prabhupada gives the example of turning towards the sun or turning away from the sun. So when we are forgetful of Krishna, then things like rape, murder, the very bad qualities in this world, they come from Krishna in the sense that Krishna has given us free will and he allows it, but they are not exactly coming from Krishna. Those are our own things. But the qualities of anger and lust, greed, all these things, they come from Krishna in their pure form. So lust is love, greed is greed to serve the Lord. These things, they come from Krishna. So it's very nice.
And Prabhu, I have a question. When you told me that, except for forgetful of Krishna, but Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that he gives the remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness.
Yes. So that's the thing. It comes from Krishna, but it also doesn't. It comes from Krishna in the sense that he allows it, he facilitates it. But our forgetfulness of Krishna is our free choice. It's something that actually truly comes from us. Because if we say even our choice to leave Krishna comes from us, then the problem becomes, well, then it's Krishna's fault. It's Krishna's fault that I'm suffering in this material world. But we don't want to blame. I mean that's not our philosophy. Also, we have free will, and that comes from us. So the Vedanta Sutta describes how all living beings are eternal, and we're eternally who we are. So we are continuously maintained by the Lord, and so in that sense we are coming from the Lord. But in one sense we are also beginningless like Krishna. So our faults are not the Lord's faults. Our decisions are not the Lord's decisions. Our free choice to forget Krishna is our choice. It is not Krishna's choice. So, and that is the philosophy of a very important, very subtle philosophy of oneness and difference, right? Achintya bheda veda. That everything is coming from Krishna, everything is Krishna, but still, simultaneously, inconceivably, we're also different from Krishna because we are his energy. We're not exactly him, we're his energy, and we have that free choice.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. That's more clear, because like we just think that Krishna gives me forgetfulness, and it's just Krishna's fault that I'm in material world.
Yes.
So
that's good. Yes. I think this is a good time to stop. It is 12:15. We are sort of right on schedule. It was a very, you could say, very enlightening discussion and reading today on Srimad Bhagavatam. And we'll continue this. We'll still we'll continue to get guest speakers and things. But now we'll just go in a more, you could say, methodical way, so that we're covering actually, we'll hopefully one day cover the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the goal, that we can read this transcendental literature. And the way it will be very enjoyable for all of us is if in our own time we read. And then when we read Bhagavatam ourselves, then when we come together on Sunday and we discuss it, then we'll have the questions. We'll have all these questions. So please go home and continue reading. Well, you're already home. I apologize. Continue reading, and please bring your realizations every week. And the more you share, the more pleasurable it will be.
So let's say 3 times Hari Bol.
Haribo.
Haribo. Haribo.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Jai. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Give us.